Every great empire begins not with a battle cry, but with a single audacious idea. In Hollywood, that idea takes the shape of a logo flashing before the opening frame. Legendary Entertainment has appeared before some of the most profitable films in modern cinema history. Yet most audiences could not tell you who built it, who owns it, or what it truly stands for. This is the story of a studio that rewrote the rules of Hollywood financing from the ground up. It is a story of billion-dollar bets, corporate takeovers, and the relentless pursuit of spectacle. Legendary Entertainment did not begin as a creative dream, but as a financial instrument. That distinction matters more than anything else you will learn about this company today. To understand Legendary is to understand how modern Hollywood actually works behind the curtain, and once you see it clearly, you can never unsee it again. Thomas Tull grew up far from the glamour of Hollywood, in a small town in upstate New York. He was not a filmmaker, not a producer, and not a creative genius by any traditional measure. What he was a businessman with an obsessive love of movies and an aggressive appetite for risk. In 2000, Tull began exploring a revolutionary idea that had barely been tested in Hollywood before. What if outside investors could co-finance major studio films and share in their profits directly? Studios had always controlled their own financing, guarding the economics of filmmaking like a state secret. Tull saw a gap in the market that others had either missed or were too afraid to enter. In 2004, he founded Legendary Entertainment with approximately $500 million in committed capital. That number was not a guess or a hope. It was a structured, institutional-grade investment vehicle. From the very first day, Legendary was built to play at the highest levels of the game. Tull had written himself a blank check, and now he needed a studio willing to cash it. Warner Brothers was the perfect partner for Legendary's audacious new model of Hollywood co-financing. The deal was structured so that Legendary would co-finance roughly 25% of each qualifying film. In exchange, Legendary would receive a proportional share of the profits, revenues, and ancillary rights. This arrangement fundamentally changed the risk profile for Warner Brothers on their biggest productions. For the first time, a major studio had a committed, sophisticated co-financing partner with genuine capital. The first major film under this arrangement was the 2005 Batman reboot directed by Christopher Nolan. Batman Begins was a creative gamble that the partnership transformed into a commercial foundation stone. The film grossed over $370 million worldwide and signaled the beginning of something enormous. Hollywood watched the Legendary model with a mixture of skepticism, curiosity, and barely concealed envy. The outsider with the checkbook had just walked into the most exclusive club in entertainment. What followed the Batman partnership was one of the most remarkable runs in modern studio history. The Dark Knight arrived in 2008 and became a cultural phenomenon that transcended the superhero genre entirely. It grossed over $1 billion globally and redefined what a comic book film could achieve. Then came The Hangover, a low-budget comedy that earned nearly $470 million on a $35 million investment. Legendary proved it was not just a titan in action filmmaking, but a force in comedy as well. Inception followed in 2010, a mind-bending original concept that grossed over $836 million worldwide. Man of Steel, Pacific Rim, Godzilla, Interstellar. The catalog grew heavier and more impressive with every year. Interstellar alone became a landmark of science fiction cinema, earning over $677 million at the global box office. Each film reinforced the same essential thesis: spectacle, properly financed, is the most reliable product in Hollywood. By the early 2010s, Legendary had co-financed films totaling well over $10 billion in global revenue. No independent entity in Hollywood history had achieved that kind of scale in such a compressed time frame. As the Marvel Cinematic Universe dominated culture, Legendary made a bold move toward building its own franchise universe. The MonsterVerse was conceived as a shared cinematic world built around kaiju, giant monsters, as mythological icons. Godzilla, in 2014, was the cornerstone, a deliberately paced and tonally serious reimagining of the classic creature. The film earned over $529 million and demonstrated that serious monster cinema still had a massive audience. Kong, Skull Island followed in 2017, injecting Vietnam-era aesthetic energy into the franchise's expanding mythology. The MonsterVerse was not just a franchise strategy. It was a statement about Legendary's ambitions as a creator. Every studio wants IP that it owns outright. Characters, worlds, and mythologies that live on the balance sheet. Legendary was no longer content to co-finance other studios' dreams. It was building its own mythology. Godzilla vs. Kong in 2021 would eventually gross over $468 million during the height of the pandemic. That number was not just a box office result. It was proof that the franchise had genuine staying power. In January 2016, an announcement sent shockwaves through Hollywood that no one had fully seen coming. Chinese conglomerate Dalian Wanda Group had agreed to acquire Legendary Entertainment for approximately $3.5 billion. It was the largest Chinese acquisition of an American entertainment company in Hollywood history at that time. Wanda's chairman, Wang Jianlin, had made no secret of his ambitions to become a global entertainment powerhouse. For Legendary, the deal represented access to the fastest-growing movie-going market on the face of the earth. China had become the world's second-largest box office market, with projections that it would soon surpass America. Having a Chinese parent company meant theoretically smoother access to a market that regularly blocked foreign films. The deal also gave Legendary enormous capital to invest in productions that could bridge Eastern and Western audiences. But the marriage between Hollywood creativity and Chinese corporate ownership would prove far more complicated than advertised. The geopolitical tensions between the United States and China cast a long shadow over every subsequent decision. Wanda's own financial difficulties in subsequent years would force Legendary to operate with increasing independence and uncertainty. When the COVID-19 pandemic shuttered movie theaters worldwide, every studio faced an existential reckoning. Legendary's response was to lean into streaming deals that would have been unthinkable just 2 years earlier. The studio struck a landmark deal with Netflix that included the high-profile fantasy epic Enola Holmes. Enola Holmes became one of Netflix's most-watched original films, proving Legendary's content translated seamlessly to streaming. The pandemic also forced Legendary into a bitter legal dispute with Universal Pictures over Trolls World Tour. Legendary sued Universal after the studio released its animated film to premium video on demand during lockdown. The dispute illuminated just how fragile and contested the economics of film distribution had become almost overnight. Streaming was not just a new distribution channel. It was a complete reimagining of the value chain. For a company built on the economics of theatrical blockbusters, that reimagining required painful, urgent adaptation. Legendary began developing properties specifically designed for the streaming audience's appetite for prestige, serialized storytelling. If one film defines what Legendary Entertainment aspires to be, it may well be Denis Villeneuve's Dune. The adaptation of Frank Herbert's notoriously unfilmable novel represented a staggering creative and financial gamble. Legendary committed to the project with the full force of its production infrastructure and creative ambition. Dune was released in October 2021 simultaneously in theaters and on HBO Max, a compromise born of pandemic necessity. Despite the hybrid release, the film grossed over $401 million theatrically and earned widespread critical acclaim. Dune Part 2 arrived in 2024 and grossed over $710 million, cementing the franchise as a modern epic. The success of Dune proved that audiences still hunger for ambitious, adult-oriented cinematic storytelling on the largest scale. It also proved that Legendary could compete not just as a financing entity, but as a genuine creative force. The studio that began as a financial instrument had evolved into something that cared profoundly about the art. That evolution, from checkbook to creative vision, is perhaps Legendary's most remarkable and underappreciated achievement. The financing model that Thomas Tull pioneered has been replicated, imitated, and studied by studios around the world. Co-financing arrangements are now standard practice in Hollywood, fundamentally altering how major films are greenlit and capitalized. Legendary demonstrated that institutional capital could enter the entertainment industry without destroying its creative core. That demonstration changed the calculus for private equity firms, sovereign wealth funds, and technology companies alike. Today, virtually every major Hollywood production involves some form of outside co-financing, often invisible to the audience. The studio system that once operated as a closed oligarchy has been permanently opened by the legendary precedent. Legendary also changed the conversation about what kinds of films deserve the biggest budgets and the widest releases. By betting consistently on spectacle, science fiction, and mythology, it helped define the aesthetic of an entire era. The dark, serious, operatic blockbuster, the kind Nolan perfected, would not exist without Legendary's financial commitment. That is a cultural legacy that extends far beyond any single box office number or quarterly earnings report. Legendary Entertainment today stands at a crossroads that reflects the broader uncertainty gripping the entire industry. Its ownership situation remains complex, its relationship with Chinese capital scrutinized by regulators on both sides of the Pacific. The streaming wars have thinned margins and forced every studio to reckon with the economics of attention itself. Yet Legendary continues to greenlight films with a boldness that belies any suggestion of institutional timidity. Projects in development span science fiction, fantasy, horror, and drama, a portfolio as eclectic as it is ambitious. The MonsterVerse continues to expand, with new installments and television spin-offs deepening the franchise's mythological foundations. And the lessons of Dune suggest that prestige filmmaking and commercial success are not mutually exclusive ambitions. Hollywood has always rewarded those willing to bet big on the transformative power of a well-told story. Legendary Entertainment, for all its financial machinery and corporate complexity, has never stopped believing that fundamental truth. The logo will keep flashing before the opening frame, and the machine will keep running, hungry and relentless. Because in Hollywood, the only legend that truly matters is the one you are still in the process of building.